The Buckeyes are going down to Georgia. They're playing Georgia in Atlanta, the Peach Bowl. Ohio State getting the number 4 playoff seed, number 4 in the rankings, playing number 1 Georgia. And this is a matchup that people started looking ahead to last year late in the season. Ohio State's explosive offense, that Georgia defense that was as good as anybody's put on a field in college football in several years. And then obviously Ohio State stumbles against Michigan and doesn't get to go. This year, now they get to go. They stumble back in, and they're trying to beat Georgia in order to maybe get a rematch with Michigan in the national championship game. So, Doug, I think you maybe have watched more Georgia than any of us this year just because of your duties co-hosting the College Football Survivor Show. Get it wherever you can find podcasts. Just your thoughts of what challenge lies ahead now for Ohio State beyond the fact that they're the number 1 seed, beyond that they're going to be in Georgia's backyard, just the kind of team, the kind of program this is.
Yeah, so I mean, they lost so much to the NFL, especially defensively. I do think their back end is probably better than a year ago, but their front seven is not as good when you lose the guys that they've lost. Their skill guys, right? I mean, they lost some running backs to the NFL, but Kendall Milton and McIntosh and some of the other guys they give the ball to are pretty good. And Stetson Bennett can be really good. Like, he can be really good out of structure. There are, I think, a decent number of similarities between Michigan and Georgia, what they want to do defensively. And I do think, like, Stetson Bennett and J.J. McCarthy is not incredibly dissimilar. So, but I do think in the end, if we thought we were getting this game last year, and we talked about it all year, I think Ohio State's a little better than last year. Second-year starting quarterback, better defense. And I think Georgia's a little worse because you lost all those guys off that defense, and they roll it back. I mean, they got some freshmen that play right away. Like, they're not afraid to put guys out there. But you just don't, you take Nakobe Dean and Jordan Davis and Trayvon Walker and all these guys off that defense, there's a little bit of an effect. So maybe this is the time when Ohio State would want this game, right? And I do think there's an emotional thing that, as much as it's the defending national champ in their own backyard, but like, all the pressure's on them. And Ohio State's, we never even should have been here, and it's going to be, the people in this building against the entire state. It's not a bad psychological spot for Ohio State either.
No, a good motivational spot for Ryan Day, who has certainly used other motivational tactics in the past, and I think we can talk about that in a completely separate context. And also maybe we need to do a separate talk just about these quarterbacks, because I'm kind of fascinated about that. The C.J. Stroud, the guy who Ryan Day went and found and had to kind of battle for on a national level, brings him in, develops him against Stetson Bennett, who is kind of the accidental national championship quarterback at Georgia, and not the guy that they would go find either. Like, they recruited a high level too, but just funny how that worked out. Stephen, Ryan Day admitted that Ohio State's win at Penn State was probably a thing that pushed it into the top 4. Georgia, though, has some really impressive wins this year. The season opening win against Oregon, 49-3. They took care of Tennessee. Score was a little bit closer, but still a game that they controlled pretty well. This is a Georgia team that has already shown that it can be on the field against the best teams in the country and not just win, but control the game.
I think last year, one of the things we found out in that SEC championship game was Georgia has an historically good defense. They also hadn't played a single competent passing offense all season long, and then Bryce Young picked them apart for 60 minutes. And then obviously they made adjustments and they won the national championship game. That's not quite the case this year. Oregon has turned out to be a top 15 passing offense. Tennessee and Hendon Hooker, we know what that is. Obviously, Hendon Hooker's hurt now, but we know what that is. They play Kentucky. Mississippi State's got a top 25 pass. They've played enough sample sizes of elite passing offenses that they're a little more ready for this version of Ohio State. And Doug just said maybe Ohio State's a little bit better. Well, I don't know. They're missing the guy who might have been the best receiver in the country coming into the season, while also losing 2 first-round draft picks. And I'm saying that understanding what Marvin Harrison has turned into and what Emeka Egbuka has come into. But they're maybe a little deeper in terms of just top-end talent at wide receiver last year than they were this year. But then you trade that off with C.J. Stroud, the second-year starting quarterback. So I do think if there's one team that maybe Ohio State can learn from, it is Tennessee, though, because from a passing attack, it is kind of built the same. Hendon Hooker, C.J. Stroud, similar types of quarterbacks, pocket passers who don't use their legs that much. Hendon Hooker uses his a lot more often than C.J. Stroud does, but the same concept, but then some deep wide receivers. And we saw how Georgia shut that down, held them under 200 passing yards that day. That's the lesson for Ohio State coming into this game, because we're here now. We're at the stage where we expect aggressive play calling Ryan Day to show back up. Weather is no longer even a question anymore. You're playing indoor track. This is when Ohio State should be at its best, but it's going against a team who's probably best equipped to slow that down.
Yeah, the roof will be closed in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, so no repeat of the Northwestern wind tunnel. But I think one of the things that's going to determine this kind of mini debate you guys are having about whether Ohio State would be better or not. Ohio State's got to get healthy.
Their offense is better. I said their team's better.
Good point. But the offense in particular, and the defense too, but they need to get healthy. This past week off, as much as Ryan Day said it was a horrible week and they wanted to be playing for the Big Ten championship game, it helped them kind of get started healing up at some crucial positions. Running back, we don't know what happened to Jackson Smith-Njigba. We may learn that this week, it sounds like, from Ryan Day. But Tommy Eichenberg and his smashed up hands, and Mike Hall Jr. and all the cornerbacks, like, they needed to get healthy at important positions, and these next 3 weeks can help them do that as they're building towards that game. We're going to talk a lot more about this on Buckeye Talk. Get that wherever you can find podcasts, and get the text 614-350-3315. A great opportunity, a great time to get the text, because huge games coming up, and we're going to be pumping out intel and analysis and everything else we can find out about this game from Buckeye Talk.